Trump slammed the document on the table. "Is this your signature, Mrs. Pelosi?" Nancy's face turned ashen. The document authorized a $50 million bribe transfer to Letitia James. Cash Paddle stood up. "And here are Ms. James's bank records. The money trail gave you away." The hearing room in the Rayburn House office building had never felt more electric. Every camera was trained on the center table where two of the most powerful women in Democratic politics sat frozen, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them in real time. It had started 6 months earlier. Trump, from his war room at Mar-a-Lago, had been watching the endless lawsuits pile up against him. Letitia James in New York, Fani Willis in Georgia, Jack Smith at the federal level. But it was the coordination that caught his attention. "They're not just prosecuting me," he told his legal team. "They're synchronizing. Look at the timing. Every indictment drops right before a major political event. That's not coincidence. That's choreography." His lawyer, Susan Netchels, had nodded. "But proving coordination is nearly impossible. These people know how to cover their tracks." Trump had smiled then. That dangerous smile his opponents had learned to fear. "Then we don't prove it. We let them prove it themselves." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Create a situation so tempting that his enemies couldn't resist. Give them rope, and document every inch as they hanged themselves with it. It started with a shell company in Delaware, Patriots for Justice PAC. On paper, it was a legitimate political action committee focused on judicial reform. In reality, it was a honey trap operated entirely by former FBI agents loyal to Trump. The PAC's first move was to reach out to various Democratic operatives with a simple message: "We have unlimited funds to support the legal efforts against Trump. How can we help?" Most ignored it, but not Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff. He forwarded the message to Pelosi with a note: "Could be useful for the New York cases." Pelosi, never one to miss an opportunity, had her team vet the pay. Everything checked out: Delaware registration, proper FEC filings, even a professional website with stock photos of concerned citizens. "Set up a meeting," she'd ordered. The meeting took place in a private dining room at the St. Regis Hotel in Washington. Pelosi arrived with 2 aides. Letitia James dialed in via encrypted video call. They were greeted by Michael Davidson, supposedly the PAC's director. In reality, he was FBI Special Agent Marcus Sterling, working under deep cover. "Ladies," Davidson had begun, "we represent a coalition of donors who believe Trump is an existential threat to democracy. We're prepared to provide substantial support to ensure he faces justice." "How substantial?" Pelosi had asked, cutting straight to the point. "Eat figures. Potentially 9 if results warrant it." Even Pelosi had been taken aback. "That's significant. What exactly are you expecting in return?" "Results," Davidson said simply. "Convictions, asset forfeiture, the complete legal destruction of Donald Trump." On the screen, Letitia James leaned forward. "To be clear, we can't coordinate prosecutorial decisions with outside groups. That would be illegal." Davidson finished. "We're not asking you to do anything illegal. We're simply offering to fund the extensive costs associated with these complex prosecutions. Expert witnesses, additional investigators, public relations support, all perfectly legal," Pelosi had added quickly. "Citizens supporting the justice system." "Exactly," Davidson agreed. "Though we would need some assurances that the funds would be used effectively." This was the moment Trump had been waiting for. The moment when greed overtook caution. "What kind of assurances?" James asked. Davidson pulled out a tablet. "We've developed a performance matrix. Indictments are worth a certain amount. Convictions substantially more. Asset seizures." He smiled. "Those are where the real bonuses come in." "Bonuses?" Pelosi's voice had an edge of excitement. "For the prosecutors involved. Completely legal consulting fees, of course. Paid to their private firms for advisory services." The room had gone quiet. This was the line. Cross it, and there was no going back. Letitia James spoke first. "My campaign has significant debts, which could be retired through speaking fees." Davidson suggested smoothly, "You'd speak at our private events. 500,000 per appearance. Very exclusive, very legal." Pelosi and James exchanged glances through the video screen. "Would need to see proof of funds," Pelosi said finally. Davidson smiled. "Of course." He pulled out his phone, logged into a bank account, and showed them a balance that made both women's eyes widen. "The $450 million. The first transfer can happen tonight," he said. "Shall we discuss specific targets?" What followed was a 47-minute masterclass in corruption. Pelosi and James laid out their entire strategy against Trump. Which properties to seize first, Mar-a-Lago would send a message. Which judges were friendly, Ungaron will do whatever we need. And how to coordinate media coverage, CNN is already on board. Every word was being recorded, every gesture captured on hidden cameras, every document photographed by micro lenses embedded in Davidson's pen. The key, Pelosi explained, is to make it look like independent prosecutors reaching the same conclusions. We can't have fingerprints on this, but we need to ensure they stay focused. James added, some of these DAs are getting cold feet about the precedent we're setting. Money helps with cold feet, Davidson observed. Yes, it does. Pelosi agreed with a laugh. They worked out the details. The PAC would donate to various legal defense funds and prosecutor campaign committees. Those entities would then hire consulting firms owned by the prosecutor's spouses or relatives. The prosecutors would receive the money as household income, technically legal but ethically bankrupt. What about Trump's assets? Davidson asked. If they're seized, what happens to them? James's eyes lit up. Civil asset forfeiture goes to the state. But the state can designate those funds for specific purposes, like funding prosecutor offices or community programs run by our allies. A virtuous circle, Pelosi said approvingly. Trump's money funds his own prosecution and our political operations. Brilliant, Davidson said, meaning it. They were writing their own indictments. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises. Davidson assured them the first payments would arrive within days. Pelosi and James left believing they'd found the gold mine that would fund Trump's destruction and their own rise. They had no idea they'd just signed their own political death warrants. Over the next 3 months, the Patriots for Justice PAC funneled exactly $50 million to various entities connected to Pelosi and James. Every transaction was meticulously documented, every deposit photographed, every spending decision tracked. The money was spent lavishly. James paid off her campaign debt. Pelosi's husband's investment firm received $10 million in consulting fees. Prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions suddenly found themselves with unexplained windfalls. And all the while Trump waited. His legal team compiled the evidence. His tech specialists traced the money flows. His media allies prepared for the revelations. But Trump was patient. He wanted them to be fully committed, fully compromised. He wanted the corruption to be so blatant that even their allies couldn't defend them. The trap was sprung on a Tuesday morning. FBI agents acting on sealed warrants raided 12 locations simultaneously. Pelosi's offices in D.C. and San Francisco, James's offices in New York, the homes of 6 prosecutors, the offices of 3 consulting firms. The media was alerted just as the raids began. Fox News had helicopters in the air. Social media exploded with images of FBI agents carrying boxes out of Pelosi's office. But the real shock came an hour later when Trump held a press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice grave, what you're witnessing is the largest corruption investigation in American political history. For months, we've documented a criminal conspiracy to weaponize the justice system for personal and political gain. He gestured to a screen behind him. What you're about to see are excerpts from recorded conversations between Nancy Pelosi, Letitia James, and an individual they believed was a political donor. The recordings played. Pelosi's voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing how to destroy Trump permanently. James calculating how much she could skim from asset forfeitures. Both women laughing about using Trump's own money to fund their campaigns. The media room erupted. Even reporters who despised Trump couldn't ignore the implications. This wasn't just bias or aggressive prosecution. This was racketeering. Every dollar they took, Trump continued, every scheme they hatched, every law they bent or broke, it's all documented. The FBI has the evidence. The American people will see justice done. Within hours, Pelosi and James were called before an emergency session of Congress. They arrived to find a room packed with cameras and colleagues who suddenly didn't want to stand too close. Byron Donalds led the questioning, his voice calm but merciless. Mrs. Pelosi, did you accept money from what you believed was a political action committee to influence prosecutions against President Trump? Pelosi, flanked by lawyers, leaned into the microphone. I absolutely deny any wrongdoing. This is a political hit job. Is this your voice? Donalds interrupted, playing the recording. Pelosi's own words filled the chamber. We need to ensure they stay focused. Money helps with cold feet. The room went silent. Mrs. James. Donalds continued. Did you discuss using asset forfeiture funds for political purposes? James tried to maintain her composure. Any discussions I had were about legitimate law enforcement objectives. Again, the recording. Civil asset forfeiture goes to the state, but the state can designate those funds for specific purposes, like funding prosecutor offices or community programs run by our allies. Cash Padel took over. Ladies, we have bank records showing $50 million flowing from this PAC to entities you control. We have recordings of you discussing quid pro quo arrangements. We have evidence of you coordinating what should be independent prosecutions. He paused, letting the weight settle. This isn't prosecution. It's persecution. And it's criminal. Trump watched from Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by his legal team. They'd spent months planning this moment, ensuring every piece of evidence was legally obtained, every recording admissible in court. The beauty of it, his lawyer explained to a young associate, is that we didn't entrap them into committing crimes. We simply gave them the opportunity to reveal the crimes they were already committing. Back in the hearing room, Pelosi tried one last deflection. This was a setup. Entrapment. Entrapment. Donalds laughed bitterly. Mom, no one forced you to take $50 million in bribes. No one forced you to coordinate prosecutions. You did that all on your own. We just documented it. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed a clear pattern. Money from the PEC to shell companies to personal accounts. The recordings revealed not just bias but criminal conspiracy. Documents seized in the raids showed years of coordination between prosecutors who were supposed to be independent. James tried to claim the money was for legitimate legal expenses, but the investigators had receipts, luxury vacations, designer clothes, jewelry, real estate. One particularly damning receipt showed James had used PEC money to buy a painting of herself. As the hearing progressed, more revelations emerged. The pair hadn't just recorded the initial meetings. They'd continued the relationship, documenting every corrupt request, every illegal coordination, every abuse of power. There were emails where Pelosi directed specific prosecutors to time their indictments for maximum political impact. Text messages where James discussed how to hide asset transfers from Trump properties. Calendar entries showing secret meetings between supposedly independent prosecutors. This is a Reicha case, one legal analyst observed on CNN, unable to hide his shock. They operated like a criminal organization, using the justice system as their weapon. The Democrats in Congress faced a choice: defend the indefensible or cut their losses. One by one, they chose survival. Chuck Schumer issued a statement calling for full accountability regardless of party. AOC tweeted about the importance of ethical prosecution. Even Adam Schiff, who'd spent years attacking Trump, suddenly discovered the value of prosecutorial independence. Pelosi and James were abandoned by their own party faster than rats fleeing a sinking ship. The criminal charges came down within a week: bribery, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, honest services, fraud, money laundering, RICO violations. The irony was lost on no one. The same statutes they'd tried to use against Trump were now being used against them. But unlike their prosecutions, this one had real evidence, real crimes, and real consequences. Pelosi's husband tried to claim ignorance of the scheme, but investigators found his signatures on shell company documents. His fingerprints were literally on the checks. James's defense team tried to argue prosecutorial immunity, but immunity doesn't cover taking bribes and coordinating persecutions. The law is clear. Prosecutors who become criminals lose all protections. As more evidence emerged, the scope of the conspiracy became clear. It wasn't just Pelosi and James. Prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions had been taking money, coordinating strategies, sharing information they shouldn't have had. Fannie Willis in Georgia was caught on tape discussing how to time the indictments for maximum damage. Alvin Bragg in Manhattan had taken $2,000 million through his brother's consulting firm. Even Jack Smith, the supposedly independent special counsel, had been getting briefings from Pelosi's team. The entire lawfare apparatus against Trump was revealed as a criminal conspiracy. Years of independent prosecutions shown to be centrally coordinated and corruptly funded. Trump held another press conference as the dominoes fell. "They called me a threat to democracy," he said. "But look what they did. They turned the justice system into a weapon. They took bribes to prosecute a political opponent. They corrupted the very foundations of law and order. This isn't about me anymore. This is about whether we're a nation of laws or a banana republic where prosecutors can be bought and sold. The trials were swift. With recordings, documents, and financial records, conviction was certain. Pelosi's defense team tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Trump's DOJ wasn't interested in mercy. "You wanted to destroy me," the lead prosecutor said in closing arguments. "You wanted to use the law as a weapon. Now you'll learn what justice really means." Pelosi was convicted on all counts. 15 years in federal prison. At 84 years old, it was effectively a life sentence. James got 12 years. Her dreams of being New York's governor died in a federal courtroom. The other prosecutors fell like dominoes. Willis, Bragg, even some federal prosecutors who'd thought they were untouchable. All convicted, all imprisoned. But the real victory wasn't the convictions. It was the complete discrediting of the lawfare system they'd built. Every case against Trump was dismissed with prejudice. Every conviction overturned. Every asset seizure reversed. The judges who'd cooperated were removed from the bench. The law firms that had participated were disbanded. The entire corrupt structure was torn down and salted earth left in its place. Trump stood in the Oval Office once again, looking at a painting of Lady Justice. "We almost lost her," he said to Kash Patel, now his Attorney General. "They almost killed justice in America, but we saved her," Patel replied, "and made sure this can never happen again." New laws were passed. Prosecutors who coordinate for political purposes face mandatory minimums. Taking money to influence prosecutions became a federal felony with a 20-year minimum sentence. Asset forfeiture funds were put under strict federal oversight. The Patriots for Justice PAC was revealed to have been a joint operation between Trump's team and honest FBI agents who were sick of seeing their institution corrupted. Agent Sterling received the Medal of Freedom for his undercover work. "We gave them every chance to walk away," Sterling said in an interview. "All they had to do was follow the law. Instead, they took the money and ran straight into the trap." Nancy Pelosi spent her first night in federal prison in a cell that had once housed a January 6th defendant. The irony was lost on no one. Letitia James's assets were seized under the same forfeiture laws she championed. Her homes, her cars, her art collection, all auctioned off to pay restitution to Trump and others she'd persecuted. The media, complicit in the scheme, faced their own reckoning. CNN executives were caught on tape coordinating coverage with Pelosi's team. MSNBC hosts were shown to have taken speaking fees from the same shell companies. The free press was revealed as bought and paid for. In the end, Trump's trap had done more than catch a few corrupt prosecutors. It had exposed an entire system of corruption that reached from local DAs to Congress to the media. "They wanted to get me," Trump said in his victory speech. "But they got themselves instead. They wanted to weaponize justice. But justice has a way of finding its real target." As Pelosi sat in her cell, she had plenty of time to think about how it all went wrong. How her greed had overcome her caution. How her hatred of Trump had blinded her to the trap being set. But mostly, she thought about that moment when Trump had slammed the document on the table and asked, "Is this your signature?" Because it was. And it always would be. Her signature on her own destruction. Her name on the warrant for her own arrest. Her greed documented for all time. The trap had been perfect, and she'd walked into it with eyes wide open and wallet wider. In the history books, it would be known as the Great Judicial Corruption Scandal of 2024. Law schools would study it. Ethics courses would use it as a cautionary tale. But for Trump, it was simpler than that. "They came for me," he said, "but I came for them harder. And unlike them, I didn't need to break the law to do it. I just needed to let them break it themselves." Justice, real justice, had finally been served. And it tasted like victory.